Great question. And a great topic previously also, which is a very important consideration, which is that you have practiced many different things, learned many different things, and yet you said that you never really settled into something. All right, so let's talk about that first, actually. And then that's very closely related to the second question about the Vata mind. So if we look, actually, at the history of meditation practice through numerous cultures for thousands of years, we find some really helpful historical information that puts things into perspective very nicely. And that is that the stories that have come down to us about the accomplishments of great meditators and these incredible people doing these incredible practices in incredible conditions and achieving these incredible things, a lot of it is mythology, okay? A lot of it is made up. And this is a normal human thing that happens, you see. So you have a person and they dedicated their life to meditation and they cultivated something. They led an incredibly spiritual life. And they had a huge impact, a deep impact on a small group of people, okay? Because the internet wasn't around back then. And there was a small group of people that would be with this person. And this person lived their life, impacted this small group of people. And then after that person passed away, this small group of people continued their teachings and their lineage. And as the teachings and the lineage was maintained, that it reached more and more people. And it drew in more and more people as a method, as a system. And that person in this process became increasingly legendary. And the stories kept getting more and more embellished. And the stories kept getting embellished because now there was a system and there was a sangha and there were teachers of the system and they wanted to get more and they wanted to get accepted by the emperor and they wanted the patronage of the emperor. And so these lineages grew and grew and grew in fantastical ways until they moved beyond legendary to mythological. All right. Now, that in no way implies that these people were not great, saintly, holy people with incredible accomplishments. It's just that we're hearing about this 1,000 years later. And we're hearing about it through all these filters of culture and politics and power, okay? And therefore, what has now come, especially in this transmission into our culture, is a real mixture of practices, systems, symbologies, mythologies, and they're all intertwined with methods. And we have to kind of take this all apart and we have to say, well, all right, what are the methods? Now, the meditation method that is the least associated with cultural appearances is Vipassana. And that is because Vipassana is really just body-based awareness, okay? And it, of course, if you go to Thailand, where it's centered, then there will be all these cultural appearances. But the practice itself is not even Buddhist, okay? It doesn't have any cultural awareness. All it's dealing with is the interface between mind and matter. That's it. It's science. It's very scientific. It's very physiological, okay? It's very neurological. And therefore, it gives us a doorway into a meditation practice that is not associated with deities, that is not associated with ritual and ceremony. The Vajrayana type of Buddhism that is more associated with deities and ceremony appeals to some people. It appeals very greatly, and people go very deeply into it, and they learn all of these ways of doing meditation with visualization and prayer and invocation and mantra and tantra, all these things. And it's very profound, and it is absolutely the right thing for some people. But that's at one side of the practices. And then on the other side of the practices, there's just kind of this pure body-based awareness. Now, what this means is that we must find, if we are looking for something that's going to keep our attention, we have to find something that works, that we enjoy. And this raises a lot of questions. Should we push ourselves through all kinds of things we don't enjoy? Should we get involved in sanghas that are problematic in terms of politics? Should we force ourselves to meditate if it's too painful physically? This raises a lot of different questions. But here's what I can share, okay? And that is, I went through years of exploration of Tibetan Buddhist Tantric Vajrayana, and I learned a lot. I was profoundly influenced. I learned about the human mind and the psyche and mythology and culture. I learned all of these different practices. I did a lot of these practices very intensively, and I also did Vipassana very intensively with a number of different teachers, and learned sort of like the whole spectrum of the Buddhist practices that way. And also I have had experience with Vedic teachings, and also with shamanic teachings and rituals and entheogens from different cultures. And so I have also sampled a lot of things from a lot of different cultures. And that's a wonderful opportunity that we have to do that. That wasn't always there. But that sampling of teachings has always been part of the spiritual path. And you can read this in all kinds of places. As a matter of fact, the Avatamsaka Sutra, okay, the Flower Ornament Sutra, it is all about, there is a section in it titled Entry into the Realm of Reality. And this is a very, very dense sutra. But that entire section, hundreds and hundreds of pages, thousands of pages just in that one section, is all about a spiritual seeker who goes to one teacher after another, hundreds of teachers, and encounters each of these teachers, asks them for teachings. What have you accomplished? What is your method? And then practices those teachings and achieves illumination in those methods, and then goes to the next teacher. Now, this tells us something very important, and that is there's no one way. There's a lot of different teachings. And one of the things that is clearly stated by these teachers, these enlightening beings, as they are called, meaning bodhisattvas in this Mahayana text, one of the things that they all say is, I found this system that works for me, and I teach this to help people based on their abilities and their propensities and their constitutions. And so this is the answer to this particular topic, this particular question, which is that there are many practices that are not suitable for us. And we also know that there's a lot of toxic things that are out there in the spiritual marketplace that we have to be careful about, that we should just reject and not get involved with. And we should be very careful about the relationship with the teachers, because there's politics, and politics is power, and power can be abused. And that's very confusing, because there are so many things that we are told that you need to do it this way, and you need to do it that way with this particular teacher, and this is the only way type of thing. Now, all I can offer here is just my own experience, which is that I was very disillusioned with a lot of these things, but I learned a lot. And then the question came to me, what works for me? What works for me? And what does that constitute? What is the criteria that constitutes working for me? All right. Well, first of all, what works for me is that I'm not confronted with any cultural problems. I'm not confronted with any power politics. It's just me and my practice. Now, that's my own criteria. Everybody has to have their own criteria. And this is exactly what Buddha said that's very helpful here. He said, try it. If it works for you, use it. That's all he said, okay? He didn't say this is for everybody. He didn't say this is the only way. He just said, try it. You must test it. You must question it. And I think this is very sound advice spiritually to help us find our way. So I tried a lot of different things. I learned a lot of different things. I highly respect everything that I tried. I became very aware of, a lot of the issues, and learned how to look at a lot of these things with, clarity, discriminating intelligence, and critical thinking and compassion. But the basic thing that it came down to is what works for me.